Thank you for coming, distinguished guests, human rights defenders and friends. Thank you for coming to this panel titled Sharia, Imams, Sharia as a source of women's rights, and the launching of our initiative, Imams for She. And if you didn't catch this earlier, this is a take of the United Nations initiative, He for She. Yeah? Muslims for Progressive Values is the only progressive grassroots organization rooted in Islam in the United States. Our advocacy revolves around women's rights, LGBTQ rights, freedom of expression, freedom of and from religion. What started out as a personal yearning of community of like-minded Muslims in America, this grew out to be a progressive Muslim movement now based out of several cities in the United States and with international affiliates in Canada, France, Australia, Chile, Germany, and Malaysia. Before we begin, I'd like to gauge your knowledge of Islam and before and after effect of this panel. I'd like a show of hands to two questions. One, who is aware of the contested, notorious verse of the Quran 4:34, where it is translated as giving permission for the husband to, quote-unquote, beat his wife? Question number two, is your understanding of Sharia law, is it God's law? The purpose of this panel discussion is to highlight the intersection between policy and religion, and specifically the compatibility between women's rights and religion, in this case, Islam. The three panelists here today, myself included, we are going to be addressing our personal insights and our professional insights. And usually what happens in the real world is we have imams speaking at policy levels and imams meeting with fellow imams, but they do not meet with us on the grassroots level, and human rights defender and social workers and community leaders such as Zeinab and myself, and how we should be working together in improving the lives of real realities of Muslims on the ground. What we want to do is to encourage, with Imams for She, a positive initiative. It started out for me personally as a result of relationship and friendship with an imam. And this particular imam, who I will not mention, was really affirming of gender parity. He was very visceral with the context of the patriarchal interpretation of Islam. And he spoke at one of our events, Muslims for Progressive Values, and it was obviously videotaped and uploaded on YouTube, and he got a lot of flack for it and dragged through the mud and called all sorts of nasty names. So we felt that it's really important for us to empower imams who are really doing the good works. We are really a bit tired of the negativity in the media, and we felt that this is one way for us to uplift the imams that are doing good works, especially on issues of gender equality, and for the Muslim majority and for the Muslims themselves to initiate to support those imams. And this is the platform that we wish to roll this out. We have seen the conditions of women's rights deteriorate, particularly in Muslim majority countries. There's been a tremendous shift toward fundamentalism, including my home country of Malaysia, which is supposed to be moderate. There are two terms often conflate. And so in preparation for the discussion we're going to have today, let's define what we're going to be speaking about. The first is Sharia, and the second part is Sharia law. And it is often mashed up together, interchangeable. And this is problematic. So as an example, let's take the issue of forced marriage. Where it pertains to much of the Muslim majority countries, forced marriage of children, of young women happens due to social, economic circumstance. Not always, but sometimes, oftentimes in those conditions. And the young girls are married off for a sum of money, for dowry, or in Arabic it's mahr, where the family collects the money. In New York, which Zeinab we will talk further on this issue, the marriage age of girls is 16 with parental consent. Did you guys know that? So we have those issues here in the United States in our own backyard, which we are not addressing. So the practice of that, so this, the consensual of forced marriage in some Muslim majority countries is based on what they call our Sharia law. And when in the United Nations they are contested, a lot of times the Muslim majority countries say, well, this is our culture, this is our Sharia law, God's law, you can't touch it. However, the Sharia, which is the spiritual watering hole, the one that quenches your spiritual thirst, is Sharia. And there are various verses in the Quran that describe the guidelines to how you should live your life in a good way. So in the Sharia, marriage is between two consenting adults, where the woman must consent to it, and where the meher dowry is given to the woman, not to the family. All right? So there's the Sharia, which is very distinctive in that the woman is the one that consents to the marriage and who has the last say. And you have Sharia law that is completely a different animal. So what we want to do is, with Imam Shamsi, we want to dissect this deeper. This is a great opportunity for you in the audience to pick his brain, his Imam brain. And with Zeinab and myself as community organizers and lay leaders, for you to pick our brain for the work that we do and the issues that we have to address in the 21st century, the issues of the day. At the end of this panel, I would like to invite you to voice your thoughts of what you've learned here today, and we'd like to, if possible, have you say it on camera. So we will set it up over here or over there, since Andrea is there. And Omer, please raise your hand. He's at the back there, and he will field 1 or 2 questions for you to answer. And if you have any other questions, Shaf right here is our other MPV staff. I really encourage you to express your views, how you think we can work together, positive and negatives you got out of this panel, please. So I also urge you to tweet using our hashtags, Imams for She, hashtag CSW59, and the respective panelists' Twitter names. Okay, without further delay, let's begin. Our first panelist is Imam Shamsi. He is an Imam who's done a lot of interfaith work. Why I wanted to invite him to this panel today is because he represents an Imam who is very learned from Saudi Arabia and also from Pakistan, but is born and raised in Indonesia and resides here in the United States. So he is really this world personality that has, I am sure, have absorbed much of the different cultures into his psyche. And I don't think you could get a more global perspective than probably from him as an Imam. And given his religious background, I think it's really important to be able to have this very in-depth conversation with him. So I'm going to field a couple of questions to Imam Shamsi first, and then I will field a couple of questions to Zeinab, and then we will have this conversation, the 3 of us, and then we will have a conversation collectively with the audience. Could you elaborate how you work together with leaders of other faiths in order to promote gender equality?
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. I'm truly delighted and highly honored to be a part of this. I'm sure that this is a very noble gathering. I just came back from Washington last night at 1 o'clock, so I'm quite sleepy. So thank you for asking me to stand. Before I come to the questions, I think we have to give you a little bit of background about what really Islam says about the woman or gender issues. I am an Imam for she and he as well, because I see that he and she is not really two separate entities in Islam. This is considered libas. It is considered a garment for each other. The other side is none without the other. And that's why Islam, from the very beginning, historically speaking, have seen that man and women are equal. Not necessarily same, but equal. They have equal rights, equal responsibilities, and so on and so forth. And the first issue in Islam that we need to deal is about the creation of the woman itself. Oftentimes we hear about that being created from the ribs of the man. That is a very big question in Islam. In Islam, it opens the windows of opportunities for the scholars to talk about it. Is really woman created from the rib of the man? Because the Holy Quran says, min anfusikum, from the same way where you were created. So as the man was created from the turab, from the clay, I do believe that the women also were created from the clay. It's not from the rib. Of course, there is a statement where the Prophet says that a woman is like rib. And the statement is not to talk about the creation of the woman. Basically, the statement of the Prophet was in response to the attitude of a man in his time, who was so rude to his wife. And he said to him, the woman is like rib, means what? It is protecting the most important organs in your body. And that is in your heart. So you take care of her. That is basically the response. It's not about that woman was created from the rib of the man. So this is the first issue that we need to deal about. Second issue is, historically speaking, when Adam was in paradise, what God says to him, Uskun anta wa zawjukal jannah. Oh Adam, stay and your wife in paradise. The Quran doesn't say stay you and take you to your wife. Or be merciful to your wife. But you and your wife equally enjoy the paradise. وَكُلَا مِنْهَا رَغَدًا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا. Enjoy everything in paradise equally. Equal enjoyment. And if I want to take this into a sexual, this sometimes a husband saying, oh, they are my tilth, and I can do whatever I want to do. From the very beginning, the Holy Quran says, enjoy in paradise equally. وَكُلَا مِنْهَا. As the man wants to enjoy that aspect of life, the woman also wants to enjoy that life. So there is equality here. Okay? وَلَا تَقْرَبَ هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةِ. Do not touch that tree. Equality in front of the law. And each side, when you violate the law, then you have to be responsible equally. My point here that since the beginning, there is equality, and it's very firm in the Holy Quran, equality of gender, man and woman, from the paradise. The time of paradise, Adam and his wife in paradise. Okay? So that is historical things, just as a background. Now, Sister Annie mentions a lot of issues that we need to deal. I have to acknowledge that Muslims or people who try to represent Islam, unfortunately, in many ways, we fail. Possibly my own self as well. Muslims say we respect the woman because that's what the Quran says. I can prove that. That's what the Prophet said. I can prove it. What the Prophet says about the woman. In fact, as a father of five, I'm going to be 6. Ooh. When I heard the Prophet, my wife is only 37 years old, by the way. As a father of 5, when I heard this Prophet saying that you have to respect and love your mother 3 times more than you, I feel that I am discriminated against that. So a man asked him, whom should I respect? And he said, your mother. The second time he said, your mother. The third time he said, your mother. And then the fourth time they say, your father. So I can say to you with certainty that in many ways the Holy Quran and the Prophet Muhammad basically even give more respect to the woman than man. And the reason is very simple. Because in his time, the mindset of the people tended to respect only men. So basically he wanted to bring a revolutionary change to the mindset and the mentality of the people at his time. This many Muslims fail to understand. Secondly, when we see the issues that Sister Annie mentioned, the issue of daraba, hitting, the issue of divorce, the issue of circumcision, the issue of forced marriage, the issue of what was
FGM,
female genital circumcision, genital mutilation, and so on and so forth. We have to understand first that not every single thing that Muslims do is the representation of Islam. I give you one example that many non-Muslim friends ask me. Where in the Holy Quran or Hadith, Prophet Muhammad's statement say that women are not allowed to drive? I said to them, your question is out of context. They say, why? I said, because in the time of the Prophet there is no car. There was only camel. So if there is, anybody says that, if there is someone says that Islam prohibits a woman to drive, possibly, I don't know, I can answer that one. But this is not a part of my religion. But you see, I do not want to blame others who have this policy. Possibly they have their own social circumstance, they have their own cultural view of life, but it doesn't represent my religion at all. So my point here is that not everything that Muslims do in the Muslim lands represent my faith. My faith is about Quran and what the Prophet practiced. let's come to some issues that Sister Annie mentioned. The issue of daraba. There is a verse in the Holy Quran says that if your wives have misbehaved, then number one, advise them. Then number two, separate in bed. Don't sleep together. Men sometimes is to be punished by this. Not the one to be punished, Do not sleep with them. And the third one, the Holy Quran used وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. And the word وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ is simplistically translated by some as hit them or beat them. And for those who speak Arabic, I'm not an Arab person. But alhamdulillah, thank God, I studied Arabic since my childhood. And oftentimes when I speak Arabic in the Arab lands, they say Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Do you know why they say Sadaqallah? Because they thought I'm reading Quran. Because their language had been broken by different accents, where my language is Quranic Arabic. So the word daraba in Arabic has at least 21 meanings. I give you two. Number one is daraballahu mathalan kalimatan tayyiba. The meaning of daraba is to give an example. If we take these meanings into that, what dribuhunna means, hey, you fail to advise them. So the third one is just give them example. You want to be respected? Love your wife. Respect your wife. There is a mutuality. So give them examples. The second meaning is فَضَرْبٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ means walking in the land. Just live. And that's why in Islam, you cannot retain your marriage in hell. You are given an opportunity to divorce, even though it is considered the most hateful, hated halal in Islam. It's allowed, but it is hated in the religion. So the meaning of daraba, if you are living in an abusive relationship, then you have to leave. And that's what divorce is all about. But to say that we are allowed to beat the wife, who is the best Muslim? The Prophet. Let me challenge the Muslims. Had ever the Prophet beat his wife? Or even said harsh word? And then you consider yourself the best Muslim and you beat your wife and say we are the best Muslims? We didn't find that from the Prophet. So again, the word daraba doesn't necessarily mean hitting. Even if you take that into consideration that the meaning punish is not hitting, because many hadith mention that you cannot harm your wife. And even there is in Sunan Abu Dawud, the hadith written by called Abu Dawud, it says you are not allowed to beat your wife. It's clearly mentioned that in the hadith of the Prophet. So again, the simplistic translation of the Holy Quran have been misleading us, and it is wrong. Now, coming to the question is what I'm doing with the interfaith communities. I think, I just wrote an article on my way here this morning about the woman, because Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all of you. And so I wrote one article, short articles, and I mentioned in the beginning that I have to acknowledge that I never learned Islam from others, from non-Muslim friends. I never learned. But oftentimes I have to appreciate my non-Muslim friends when they reminded me about my teaching, including respecting the woman, including how to love your wife, including how to be gentle and to be kind to your spouse. Saying good mother sometimes is considered in the Muslim land is bid'ah. Oh, this is an innovation which is not allowed in Islam. In fact, it reminds me that for my as a Muslim, I consider every day is my Mother's Day. Because it's the day. If I respect my mother, that is my day. And so coming to that, I'm now building interfaith dialogue and understanding the gender relations, and I have learned a lot from my Jewish friends, my Christian friends, even from other traditions, that how we can share one another. For my non-Muslim friends, let me just tell you this ayah in the Holy Quran, verse in the Holy Quran, that Allah created us from one mother and father, and made us into different backgrounds, nations and tribes and skin color, cultures. That's God's will. God did not create us as one single community. For what? The purpose is لِتَعَارَفُوا, so that you get to know one another. And getting to know one another is very crucial in this interconnected world where no single community can live by themselves without the others. It's the time to share. So I do really learn from others, and I do share with others about my values. Thank you very much.
Zeinab Eyega is the Executive Director of Sauti Yetu, a community-based organization that works with African immigrant women and families both in the New York City metropolitan and across the USA on issues including violence against women and girls, early forced marriages, gender education, and much more. Ms. Eyega is a management, oversees the management leadership in developing the strategic focus of Sauti Yetu's program and operations. So welcome, Zeinab. I am going to ask Zeinab one question, and then we're going to alternate the issues here. From your experience working with a vast amount of young women who seek support from Sauti Yetu, can you share with us what some of the short and long-term consequences are when women experience early and forced marriages and FGM and FGC?
I work with immigrant women and girls, and our sole primary goal is to help newly arrived immigrants actually adjust and acculturate to life in a Western context. And through that, we do provide direct services. So we're a little bit different in a way that, because we deal with people day to day, every day, with their basic needs and survival needs in a new country. For example, we do a lot of work around domestic violence. So we work with women fleeing violence from their homes to find shelters, to find legal representation. And then the work with young women is around forced early marriage. And actually one of the things we've been learning and seeing in the community that we work with across the 5 boroughs in New York City is that a lot of the young women who are Muslim women who are beginning actually now to learn and know about their religion. Because remember, what the text and the books say is totally different than how people practice it. And you have a large number, especially women and girls, who are not literate in their own faith. They don't know the text because the texts are always interpreted for them by the learned ulama. So now we have groups of women who are actually learning and teaching themselves the religion. Let me share with you a very simple example. We've been working with this young woman who's a part of our program, and the family wanted her to marry somebody. They had been betrothed when she was young, and now she is at the age of 16. The family wanted her to get married to this young man, but she didn't want to marry this young man. She had found another young man that she really loved and wanted to marry him. The family didn't want to allow her to marry this other young man because this young man came from a lower class family background, while the other young man that they wanted came from the same social class level that the family wanted. But this young man, although he came from a social class of the family, was not, educated. While this other young man was really educated, and this woman with the young man had a lot in common. So we got involved in it because the school called us and said, this young woman is being pressured to get married. She was doing very well in school. Her grades are sliding. She seems to be despondent and depressed whenever she comes to school. She's missing a lot of school. What can you guys do? So we went to the school, we met with her, we asked her what she wanted us to do. Long story short, she said, I know Imam in Brooklyn that I've been talking to. Can you guys help me go with Imam and go talk to my family? Because I don't want to disobey them, but I also don't want to marry somebody that I don't know, I don't love. And well, this young man that I want to marry, who meets all the requirements that the family actually is looking for. Because the family wanted the guy to be religious, wanted to have a decent income, and wanted to make sure that the guy, where he came from wasn't important, as long as he was a Muslim. So the short end of it is that we ended up negotiating with the family until they allowed the girl to marry the man of her choice. But what this young woman did was actually learn about the faith and what the text said, and what the text gave her her own rights so that she could negotiate with her parents. And that worked very well. In some of the cases that we've worked with, that didn't work. It actually became very risky for the young person, where we had to take drastic measures to kind of remove them from the home and put them in a safety area. What I'm trying to share with you guys is that the way the faith is interpreted is totally different from the way people live and experience the religion. And with many of women in our communities, they actually don't know what the religion says. They don't know what their rights are in the religion because the religion is always interpreted for them but the powers that be. And people in positions of power never want to give up power because they will interpret things that will maintain their status quo. So that's the work that I've been doing. And not only the young girls in our community who are learning that, but also the older women now. We have women who don't know how to read and write, but through beginning to learn the Arabic alphabet, they're learning literacy so that they can read the Quran for themselves and they can understand what it says and interpret it for themselves. So we're seeing that movement that is actually, coming along in New York City, especially within the African immigrant and refugee community. I don't know how that is in the other communities. Thank you.
In the Quran, it permits women to work outside of the home. It actually demands that women keep that wealth and the earnings for themselves rather than share it with a family pool. It requires that men provides for the family, right? So it is a very, the job description here is very clear, right? But the modern society that we live in is not such. And so I'm going to talk to Imam. Imam Shamsi is going to address the issue of women working outside the home, inheritance, because as we see now that many Muslim women are actually working and supporting the family. So shouldn't they inherit? And should they inherit more or equal to what has been described in the Quran? And I'll ask Zeinab to address her experiences in working with the community, with the immigrant communities, where they are struggling with divorce rates now because of the change of dynamics, the change of the social structure, where the woman now is required to work in order to support the family. Yeah? Okay, so Imam Shamsi, working outside the home for women in the Muslim majority countries, especially in the context of Islam and inheritance. What can we do to change this to the 21st century application?
Thank you very much. Before coming to the two questions, let me just tell you a story that happened in the time of the Prophet Muhammad about forced marriage issue. A girl came to Prophet Muhammad crying, and she said to him, "Do we have the right to reject our father's proposal?" And the Prophet Muhammad asked her what happened. She said, my father wanted to arrange me to marry my cousin, and I didn't want. So the Prophet Muhammad said, "Did you accept?" She said, "No." The Prophet Muhammad said, this upon him said, "It didn't happen. The marriage didn't happen unless you accepted." And then she left. After some steps, she came back smiling, and she said, basically, I accepted it. Just I wanted to make sure that we girls have the right to say no or right or yes. So it means that marriage in Islam is by the girl's consent. The father can propose, can suggest. That is the meaning of arrange. Arrange means you can suggest to your kids, not only to the girls, but also to the boy. My son, I've met these girls, mashallah, beautiful, cute, educated, Why not? You can suggest, but you cannot force. That is the meaning of arranged marriage. You can suggest to your kids. But to force, absolutely, is against the Islam, the teaching of Islam. Now, coming to the issue of works, there is no such black and white regulation in Islam about women working outside of home. There is no such. There is no prohibition from the Prophet Muhammad that says that women are not allowed to work outside. What we know from the history that his own wife was a big businesswoman. And we didn't find any statement that came from his mouth saying that stop business. What happened is that Khadija was so busy supporting his wife, her husband. But she continued her business. And she was one of the largest business in Mecca at the time. And he never prohibited his wife to continue doing business. So that itself is a very strong indication that in Islam, women have the right to work and to continue and to pursue their career, professionalism, without sacrificing their responsibility as wife, as mothers. Because I think the issue here is about balance. Because sometimes in the name of career, in the name of professional things that we do outside the job, and then we sacrifice our homes. I think there must be balance between the two. And that's why, again, when I come to that verse of the Holy Quran, Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libas, they are garment for you and you are garment for them, means there is a mutual responsibility. That in time that the wife has that opportunity to support the family, why not? And let me just tell you that there are many female diplomats here in New York City, posted in New York City, where the husbands are basically just accompany their wives, and including Muslims. Indonesian diplomats, there are some women, and their husbands just accompany the wives. So you're going to say this is not Islamic? Should we blame the wife and say you are doing something which is not Islamic? This is about mutuality. It's about flexibility. It is about that. And let me just, before coming to the issue of inheritance, let me just tell you that in Islam, there's only two things that will never be changed. Number one is about our theological concept, believing in one God, believing in the Day of Judgment, believing in and so on and so forth. And number two is ritual practices. We cannot change it. We are praying 5 times a day. I cannot say, oh, since I'm living in New York, I want to pray 7 times because we have a lot of challenges here in New York. No, I cannot change that once. But when I come to the law, particularly that's related to the social issues, then there are discussions around that. Let me just give you an example. Conventionally speaking, Muslim women are not allowed to be a wife for the non-Muslims, conventionally speaking. Now, my experience here in the United States, there are some women, some sisters who came to me who wanted to become a Muslim. And she has a husband, she has kids. Should I say, no, you cannot become a Muslim because you have your non-Muslim husband? How do you think about that? So here the Muslims are challenged to open their horizon, to open their minds. That there are some circumstances that your opinions might be challenged. You cannot stick in that past opinions because they have different circumstances. And many of those interpretations are basically male-dominating societies' interpretations in the Middle Ages. And it's not only exclusive to Al-Islam, even to Judaism, to Christianity as well. You have those interpretations, same with us. Same with us. Unfortunately, I have to say this out of concern that sometimes media truly is not fair in treating our religion. When you come to the mistreatment of the woman, it is very easy for the media to say this is because of the religion, because of Islam. But when you come to the mistreatment of the woman in some part of the world which happen to be non-Muslims, there is no relation with the religion, by the way. It's just because the people are doing bad, they are evils, but they have nothing to do with the religion. So I think we have to be fair here. And so coming to the issue of inheritance, there are discussions among the scholars. And if we come back to the foundations of Islam, it is about fairness. It is about justice. It is about treating each side with justice. And I think the spirit of Islam, and let me just tell you this, there is no single religion, even teaching, that gave right of ownership and inheritance to the woman before Islam. Please do study the history. This is the 7th century issue. And yet Islam has already said woman has the right to inherit. Where the British woman at that time? European woman at that time. So I have to be proud of this. But I have to say that it was the beginning of the journey. It was the first step. The discussion is still going on. That there's opportunities for our sisters to have their equal rights. Why? Because the basis is about justice. The basis is about equality. So we are not stopping in discussing this issue. And I'm trying to convince my fellow Imams to open their horizon, their visions about interpretations of the Holy Quran.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. So Zeinab, you share your experiences on the issue of marriage and work in the immigrant communities that you shared with me before, and maybe you can add more to that.
Oh, okay. I think the experience of African Muslim women is uniquely different because African women have always worked. They have always worked outside the home. They've been forced due to circumstances to be able to be the breadwinners. So actually in New York City, a lot of African women actually, if you go into all the 5 boroughs, you know, it was African women who actually set the trend for having natural hair and braiding natural hair in the United States. Before that, actually, having an African braided hair was considered to be so backward that no one wanted to be seen that way. But it was actually African women who started coming in the 80s and 90s, started opening salons, hair braiding salons across the 5 boroughs, that today you see a lot of hair braided across the country. And African women set that, that trend. One other thing that African women set the trend for is actually, working around the street, African street vendors. You have a lot of African street vendors. What makes it unique for African women is that because they've had to find ways for socioeconomic, means for their families, that they've actually been the main breadwinners in the homes and supported the families. So we see the side effect in a way that actually the woman earns the money and the man controls the decision making of how that money is spent. That has been the challenge that we saw in the community. We actually saw a lot of women who have 3, 4 hair braiding salons, are making good money, but they have no idea how much money they've saved in the bank because the bank account is in the name of the husband, right? We have a group of women who actually maintain a lot of the African masajid in the neighborhoods, who pay the rent for the mosque every month, $10,000 because they collect it. But the mosque never tells them, gives them an accounting of how that money is spent. So you have this group of women who pay for the mosque for 10, 15 years, but they don't have any participation in the leadership of that mosque. You have a lot of our women who are now getting into the healthcare industry, becoming home health aid workers, becoming nurses, and they're making more money than their husbands. But still, their husband will make decisions about how that money is spent. So it's a little bit different from other Muslim majority communities where actually women in higher socioeconomic status who are allowed to stay home. And I think living in the home, not doing work, is a luxury that many of the women that I work with cannot afford. They have to earn income to pay for daycare for their children. They have to pay rent. If your husband works as a taxi driver and maybe earns less than $100 a day, how is he going to pay rent? It is your hair braiding, where you stand on your feet for 10 hours a day to braid someone's hair, that is the one that's going to pay the rent at the end of the day. So, I think this whole issue of women not being able to work outside the home is also a question around class. It's no longer a question about faith, it's a question about class. Because I'm sure, when I lived in Cairo, poor women in Egypt actually worked outside the home. They couldn't afford to stay inside the house. And the husbands were pragmatic to know that, they could not afford not to have both adults in the home not to work. So I think it's a question more about socioeconomic and class issues that we need to address than the issue of faith and how faith is interpreted.